What's going on, guys? Welcome to another Sunday video. So typically on Sundays I try to do like developer stories, and today I have someone special. His name is Eddie Jowd. Eddie Jowd. Anyways, he's from the UK. He's a freelancer. He's swapped careers, kind of like me. He got an electronic engineering degree, then he moved to dev, and then he moved to freelance. He's been freelancing for 9 years, and on top of the freelancing for 9 years, he's in the top 500 open source contributors. So like he gets invited to events around all over the place. Like in this interview that I'm doing, it looks like he's interviewing me. Like he's got a 4K camera set up for his webcam, and I'm over here with my little kid. Anyways, there's actually a lot of value here. I get a lot of questions all the time about how can I get started contributing with open source? How, like, what are some good practices? What are some sites that I can go to? Do you know any repos? This guy has it all. He's got all the answers for you. So we're talking about freelance, we're talking about open source, we're talking about how he made his move from electronic engineering to dev, and we're talking about different kind of like hackathons you can go to, there's so much value in this video. I just can't wait for you guys to see it. He has his own YouTube channel, actually. He said he made his YouTube channel because of me, and he's been working on building his brand, so I'm going to paste his YouTube channel here with a little screenshot, and then I'm going to link it down, and I'm going to pin it as a comment, so go subscribe to him. He provides a lot of value. He's giving back to the community. He really loves open source. He's passionate about it. He's trying to give you guys tips and tricks. And then on top of that, he has a startup where he basically works with continuous integration and looks at different versions. And I'll link that if you want to go look at his startup too. So he's a super cool dude. I really appreciate you for coming on and doing this and willing to give your story. If you want to see more of these developer stories, of other people's stories just besides me, right? I'm trying to give you guys different perspectives, other people's story, what they're about, how they made it. Like, I'm not the end-all be-all, know-it-all. These people have, great stories. So I hope you enjoy this. If you do, hit that little subscribe button, hit the like button. Let us know what you think. You can reach out to Eddie. He's on Discord. He's Eddie Jowd, or you can just go to his GitHub or LinkedIn and shoot him an email. Since he's on Discord, there's a link for the Discord in the description. Every morning I've been making a motivational video just to help me get better at speaking motivational things, because I listen to a lot of books but I kind of forget. So I've been making a concerted effort to make a motivational video every morning. And so if you're into those motivational videos, follow me on Instagram. Okay? Okay.
Hey everyone, so my name's Eddie. I've been coding for about 15 years now, and I've been freelancing for about 9 years. I was just going to say I'm really passionate about coding and open source and encouraging more people into the open source community.
This is the bread and butter of the interview. So your top 500 contributors to open source in the world. How can I contribute to open source that's not a spelling error?
Spelling error is a good place to start. That's how I started. So thinking back now, I think my first 3 or 4 pull requests were spelling mistakes or punctuation mistakes. And it's a good way to kind of get into the flow of raising of PR, kind of forking the project, raising a PR and so on. So I don't want to belittle that. I think it's good. People should just do whatever they can to help, and that still adds value. If anyone wants to do that on my projects, by all means, go ahead. Any of my projects, if you see a mistake, as small as it is, just raise a pull request. I'm more than happy to merge it. Even my startup's 100% open source, so all that's out there. But if you want to take it further, then there are things like automated testing. So a lot of have automated tests, but they might be missing a bit of code coverage. So writing some automated tests would be a really good way to get into it. Also documentation. A lot of open source projects do have documentation, but then I think there is an assumption that when you're going through the steps, it makes some assumptions that you might know how to do X or Y. And when you're first coming to it, you might not be aware that this project needs whatever it is. And so projects that I've contributed have just putting in that kind of step 3B, for example, don't forget, or note, don't forget to do this, because it really helps lowering the barrier to entry for someone using the project. A lot of my open source projects now, I try and give them to someone who's never used the project and say, can you just spend an hour using this? And if they're in the first 5-10 minutes, they're saying, I'm at this step, it doesn't work, then I know I've missed something. So those contributions, documentations, and if you really want to get into it, then yes, coding and doing bug fixes is probably the next step, and then doing features. So if there's a feature you want, raise an issue and see if the project maintainer wants to include that feature. If they do, then by all means go and submit a pull request that has that feature. Read their contribution guidelines in terms of, does it need a bit of documentation? Does it need what automated test they want, end-to-end or integration or unit test or all of the above? And then that's a better way to get your PR merged. So yeah, definitely read their contribution. If they don't have one, raise an issue and say, what are your contribution guidelines? That's really important because you don't know exactly what they want and how they're doing it. You can see examples from other PRs, but it will be really good to just save you hunting around.
This is probably a loaded question, but I saw this question a few times in some streams. What is the future of open source? Because it's all open source, it's free. Besides donations, like that's how they stay afloat, I guess. What does the future look like? I think that it will become more and more open source as we go. Kind of like GitLab is an example. Like they have employees, they're a company, but it's all open source.
Yeah, absolutely. So over the last 15 years, I've seen open source grow from strength to strength. I mean, I'm wearing my Ubuntu cap here as well, which is actually wearing my GitHub hoodie as well. I don't know if logo. All swagged up, but yeah. So it's been growing massively and is fully open source, and they sell support. Same with Red Hat, as you mentioned, GitLabs. To build a community, so a lot of these companies want to build a digital ocean. I mean, they do a lot of great work around the community, and same with GitHub. But the best way to build a community, I believe, maybe like 90% of your code base, and then you might have your kind of crown jewels still private. But then at least if people want that feature on the UI or want that feature on the API, they can submit a pull request and get that merged in, and it allows you to build a community around your project and your code. And documentation gets so much better because people are contributing to documentation, to code, automated tests. So yes, I see it growing. I think more and more. Look at Microsoft. Microsoft were the complete opposite of open source. Now, most things they do is open source.
Microsoft's a good example because they came out with Visual Studio Code like a few years ago, and it was terrible. But because it's open source, now it's good. Like, I don't know. That's what I always think about. Or GitLab. Mainly GitLab because I applied there. And they were like, we need to see your open source contributions. And I was like, I don't have any. So they want to see your Stack Overflow answers and your open source contributions. And so how much code are you pushing every day to be in the top 500 open source contributors?
Last year, I made an effort to push every day, and even just a small bit of work. So in the evening before I went to bed, I'd think, right, tomorrow, what bit of work could I do that would add value? Even if it was just a bit of filing, just moving, I don't know, I've always wanted that button to go from here to there. So I'm a morning person, I'm not an evening person. I do my coding in the morning. And so the night before, I do some research, I plan what I want to do the next morning, I'd raise an issue for it, and so I'd say I want to do this work. And the next morning, I would have that issue already on my screen, and I would then just go on and code and do that bit of work. And it's just a small piece of work. So keep issues or pieces of work as small as possible to add value. So what's the smallest amount of work one can do to add value to the project? So I was doing probably maybe 5 to 10 contributions per day. And then on GitHub, they include raising an issue. A commit is a contribution. Raising a PR is another contribution. So imagine you had you found an issue with a project and you raised an issue. That's one contribution. And you did say 2 or 3 commits, and that's now you're up to 4. You raise a pull request, now you're up to 5 contributions. So that they're all considered as contributions. So you could easily, with fixing one defect and including raising it, and so you could usually get 5 contributions in a day, and you could do that within an hour, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, just little and often, and it's just getting started. And once you kind of get into it, the momentum just builds up, and you start doing more and more and more.
So is there any open source GitHub repos right now that like beginners could go and contribute to, like right now after watching this video?
Yes, so on GitHub there is a label called my first pull request, and if you search for that, it will show you all the easy kind of issues that you can pick up and get involved in projects. The other thing I was just going to say that I remembered was it's to maybe include in the video is it's really important for people to go to events to network. Because I don't use recruiters. I use recruiters early on in my days, and that was the biggest waste of time ever. And so now I go on recommendation, or I meet people at tech events or conferences or hackathons. I love to hire people from hackathons because you work with them, and for those 2 days at a hackathon, you're all under stress, you're hungry, you're tired, and if you can work with someone, those could really work with someone on a day-to-day basis. So That's how I ideally like to hire people, and how I meet a lot of my clients are people at the event.
So there's two main topics that I want to talk to you about: freelance and open source. Both of those things I get a lot of questions about, and you have way more experience than me. So let's start there. If people want to get into freelance, like how long did it take for you to move to freelance?
That's a really good question. So if I cast my mind back, I did lots of side. Well, I worked my day job. I did lots of side projects, and I charged people for them quite low to begin with, and until I built up a bit more of a network, and they told their friends and told their friends of friends, and these were small clients, like small projects, and then just built up from there. And then when I realized it was taking a lot of time, but I was doing quite well from it financially, I decided to do that full time. And then I started going more into contracting for the bigger companies who, it's where it is kind of full time or part time, and they're charging you, you're charging an hourly or a day rate, and it's usually very lucrative. So that's what I did, and have been doing that for a long time. And I highly recommend it for anyone passionate. So like yourself, I think it's brilliant that you're going freelance. I think you'll do well from that.
What kind of projects were you working on? Were they like WordPress contracts? Were they like applications, mobile, desktop? What were you making starting off?
So I actually started off with just doing static websites on the side, so just HTML and CSS and maybe a tiny bit of JavaScript. Actually, most of them didn't even really have JavaScript. It was so basic that people wanted websites. I appreciate things have changed from maybe 10 years ago, 11 years ago when I started doing it on the side, and when I started going mainstream, or sorry, full time, kind of 9 years ago. I appreciate things have changed. You've got WordPress has moved on a lot. You've got Wix and some other sites that people use to make themselves, but they'll always reach, I think, a limit if they're doing it themselves because they don't have the technical skills. So eventually they're going to, want a technical person to take it that step further. And then also people had websites or had WordPress sites, and they wanted to do more. They wanted online e-commerce, or they wanted a secure area where they could upload videos or documents and track who's downloading what and when. And so, yeah, that's when it started getting more exciting, and that's when I realized I actually wanted to do that full time. And I don't regret it at all. I highly recommend it. If someone's willing to work hard, then definitely they should do it.
What do you ever worry about running out of clients as a freelancer? I know maybe not now after like 9 years. You probably have like a line of people like, hey, it's my turn. But like when you were first getting into it, when you made that decision to do freelance, were you ever like, okay, how do I maintain this train of revenue and clients? How did you handle that?
So that's actually a great question. So yes, it is really hard at the beginning. Starting on the side while having my full-time job, I think allowed me to build up that confidence, build up a bit of money on the side. So that if I did have any downtime or quiet time, then I wouldn't be stressed. Touch wood, I didn't. I was always busy, but if I did have any downtime, I wouldn't have worried too much. I tried to remove spending money on silly things. Okay, yes, I still go out with friends, but I wouldn't kind of go crazy. I'd be a bit more strict with myself, so I could save some money on the side. And that was really good. That was advice given to me, and that worked really well. And then once I had this nest egg on the side, I could go for those bigger projects and those more challenging projects that had, that were more beneficial to me, because I would learn more, I'd meet more people, and I'd make more money. But at the beginning, I didn't want to jump straight into that because it's a bit more riskier.
How did you know
So I
what to
would tell
charge?
people
Oh, go ahead.
that's a no, that's even a better question actually, because that's actually really hard. And I used to try and work out roughly how long it would take me, and then I would try and put a cost to that, and I would add probably about 25% because there's always extra work that kind of comes out of the woodworks. I don't know if that is the best way of doing it, but that's what worked for me and allowed me not to always be the one who kind of got shortchanged. Because unfortunately, I think as the techies, we always kind of want to do such a good job, and the clients sometimes can take advantage of that or not realize they're taking advantage of it. So indirectly, oh, just one more thing, and you don't want to upset them, so you do try and do that extra bit of work. So yeah, always have a buffer, and I found actually advice I would give is don't try and quantify the whole project, maybe do it in phases, and if you can keep the phases to as small as possible. So going back to their MVP, like what can the client use? So the minimum viable product they could put out in front of their client, then maybe quantify that if it is 2 weeks work, and then you could quantify that, and if there is any movement, then either way, neither of you are kind of worried or stressed because it might only be a few days rather than if you're quoting for 6 months, it could go a month either way, which the client will obviously be really upset about, and so would us as techies.
So do you use, I'm assuming you're doing a flat rate, not hourly?
It swings in roundabouts. It actually depends. Sometimes so more recently I'm doing because then that way, doing Agile, I say to the client, if you want to make changes next week, that in the next sprint, that's fine. But you do realize that it has a knock-on effect to the cost, and therefore they're happy to make changes. So we do like a weekly sprint, and I charge hourly, and then that way, if next week they want to make changes because they've just thought of a new idea or they've seen what you developed this week and they want to make changes, they can. And if it pushes the whole timeline out, that's fine because they're just going to end up paying me more.
So for what was the very first project that you charged for? Do you remember what it was? And then how much did you charge?
Actually, I don't remember. That was just too long ago. I can, in terms of my going when I went full time into freelancing or contracting. I do remember it was for a courier company in the UK, and I think I charged, going back 9 years, I think was about £300 per day.
300 a day?
So that probably is really low nowadays because money's moved on, and this is going back almost a decade.
That I don't feel qualified to charge 300 pounds. Like, so that's like 450 bucks or something. That's like 450 bucks a day times, well, I guess, are you doing it for a month? But for a month, that's a lot of money. It seems.
Yeah, I think it was a 3-month rolling contract. I ended up being with that client for about a year and a half. And so it ended up being, yeah, really good. But that was the market rate for a contractor. I was focusing on PHP back then. So I'd had, I think, maybe 6 years PHP experience. And I was just getting into open source as well. So that really helped me. I made contributions to, back then it was like Zen Framework 1 or something. And so I was making a few just little bug fixes and tweaks to that. And that really helped me get a bit more noticed.
So you kind of built your credibility off of the open source way back when it was still growing. So what got you into code? Like, what's the education history? Like, did you go computer science, masters, or give us that background?
You're actually going to laugh. So I didn't do computer science. I did electronic engineering at university, and I did a master's in it as well. But I actually chose all the modules to avoid coding because I hated it. I actually hated coding. It was taught really badly. So looking back now, it was so theoretical, practical. I really didn't like it. I remember making any excuses to try and avoid those modules. And I came out of uni, so I did a second degree, a master's in electronic engineering, came out, went into electronics for a year, and I really didn't like it. I didn't like the electronic side. I remember on my kind of first month on the job, I had to build this circuit board, and I blew the chip, and I had to go to my boss and say, look, I've just blown a 400-pound chip. I need another one. And I didn't like, there's no undo button. So I really didn't enjoy that. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna try coding again. I'll just see if I enjoy it. And because I was doing it practically, I was just trying to build like a Hello World website back then. I thought, actually, you know what, I really enjoy this. And I just got really, really stuck in from it from then. And it's just snowballed from then. I think I'm actually glad I didn't do a computer science degree because I think I would have hated it even more because it would have been forced on me, and probably I would have, yeah, pushed back and not wanted it so much. So yeah, quite interesting now how I'm coding so much, and last year being in the top 500 open source contributors in the world. All our holidays, family holidays, are around conference events around the world, or mostly around Europe. And yeah, you wouldn't believe that if you knew me back at uni. Nowadays it's even better because I think companies and people, they're more aware that having a different background actually adds value, and looking at problems from a different way. You don't want 5 employees or 5 people on a team all looking at the project the same way. I think it's more about the attitude now, and kind of your contribution to the team. Everyone needs to add value to the project and the team. So the best teams I've worked with is where we've actually had people from all sorts of backgrounds, from the sciences to the arts, and they're all contributing and helping to the team. People don't just have to code to be in the team. A lot of my teams that I build up now, contain a business analyst, someone who speaks to the client and gets the information and writes the kind of stories for the project that the technical people will do. We have a tester, be it a manual and automated, and the developers. We even try to have a documenter, someone who can take some of the notes from the team and actually document it. It still goes into the code base, but yeah, there's lots of skills are needed. So as long as someone's adding value to the team, I think their background and their title become less important.
How many jobs did you have before you were coding full time?
I think just the one, and then I went in as a junior dev. Yeah, boot camps weren't a thing back then, or not that I was aware of, and UK. So it was more about, could you do something practically? I think the testing, the interview stage has taken a few ups and downs. So when I did it, it was probably more, can you do this, and you just show them how you did it, and then it went into more. I think more, do you know this? When we went through a phase, maybe just in the UK, I'm not sure how it was in the US, but where people wanted specific syntax, which was the weirdest thing for a few years. A lot of the tests or the interviews that I went to, and also that I did, we were more saying in PHP, did you know, do you remember is it like, I don't know, haystack needle or needle haystack, and all the different parameters, and a bit of a memory game. And maybe because IDEs weren't so good there with the IntelliSense where it auto-completed for you and gave you the tips. So it was all trying to memorize that. Where looking back, that was really stupid and useless. I know my interview style has changed a lot, and I'm more keen on getting someone who is passionate and who wants to do a good job. And like someone like yourself, Josh, I'd hire you. Like, really, just what you do, you're so passionate, and you give back to the community with your with the resume stuff you're doing, content you put out there, just so much awesome stuff. So that counts for a lot. I think people want someone who is passionate. So yeah, it's really good work. So
I don't really know what to say. I guess I'm not good at taking compliments, but thank you. I appreciate all of that. I think it just depends on the company, like how big the company is or what the culture of the company is. Some people are just like, can you do the job? We don't care anything else past that. And then other companies are like, do you have like the same vision? Do you have like the same kind of outlook on things? Like, I think you and I kind of have like that similar kind of like work hard, play hard, give back, But some companies are just like, this is your spot in the machine. You're the gear, and now do the job.
My suggestion to people is, when you go for interviews, interview the company, and if it's like that, you're going to pigeonhole you, then go find a more modern company. That's such a dated thing, dated company that does that. I know it still happens, but more are becoming more up to date, more modern. So just unless you're really desperate, I would say be selective in jobs that people can take if they have that luxury. A lot of people maybe don't, especially early on in their career. But make sure you interview them. When I interview, if I'm on the other side, if someone doesn't ask any questions, I actually get really worried. So, and it's not questions about salary and how many days do I have off. Yes, they're important questions. Don't get me wrong, to ask because at the end. But in terms of ask us about our ethics, what do we do? What are our best practices? How can the team learn? How can the team get better? And all those sorts of good things. I mean, I walk out of interviews. If I'm getting interviewed, if someone says, "Hey, yeah, we're a great team. We have a beer fridge and we do pizza on a Friday," I'm like, "Yeah, see you later. I'm not interested." Because for me, we'll do that anyway as a team if we get on. I want to make sure that they do the stuff that I feel is more best practices and helps the team gel. If you gel with the team, you'll organize your own lunches, you'll organize your own kind of dinners and Friday nights and all the rest. So I feel that's more trying to force the problem rather than trying to get the team to work well together as a team.
It's like when you're a salesman and you're trying to sell the features rather than the benefits. That's what startups do. They sell their features rather than like, if you work, then these are the benefits. Like, whenever I go in, I'm always like, can I see the thing that you're working on? Who am I working with? Can I go meet that guy? Let me see the guy that's going to be managing the project. Let me meet that guy. Like, what is something that you're working on that I would do on my first day? Can I see what I would do? And then like, I'll try to do that thing. like on the spot if it's feasible or if they will let me or interested in doing. There's a lot of people who just want a job that they're willing to just they're too afraid to say anything that would possibly jeopardize it. But I think it's kind of split, I guess. Not for me, but I'm pretty firm on like it's okay to show your personality, at least in this industry, in the tech industry. Maybe if you want to do like, I don't know, finance or something, maybe a banker. I don't know, but in this industry, I think it's okay to have a little flair, like show people what you're about. I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
No, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, what you'd said was brilliant. Just to kind of reiterate it is do ask to meet the team. I think that's really, really valuable. And I think that I would just have that as a massive tick. Go, right, this person's great there. That's brilliant. Meet the team, see what they're working on. I mean, when the interview or during the interview, say, look, can I stay a bit later for an extra half an hour after the interview or an hour the team's working on? I do that, and I think it's also brilliant if I'm interviewing someone to me. I think that's so good. It shows you want to be part of a team, and that is so much more valuable than, hey, I can remember this syntax in JavaScript and or whatever Java or whatever people are doing. So yeah, I think that's great advice. I think that's really good, and being yourself is really important. Because otherwise people will find out anyway what people are really like. So yeah, just be yourself. I think that's good to show your personality. You're completely right.